Greetings, this is post-production Cory. This show was originally released on December 30th, 2021, and now it is getting re-released after being remastered and retooled on December 30th, 2023. Was not planned that way, it just happened that way. If you listen to the original one and you're hearing it again for a second time, you'll notice differences, but why in God's name would you be listening to this a second time? Really, I'm just remastering this for first-timers, but hey, hi first-timer, the last one, it sounded a little different. That's all you need to know. Okay, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm just going to say, on with the show.
All right. Grab your Funko Pops and slobber all over the bones. It's the last show of Season 1 of Musical Shenanigans. And now, fresh from their sanitary foil packages, here's your host, Cory, Dave, Scott, and special guest, Mel Tracy.
All right, this is Cory.
Yeah, and this is Dave.
Oh, and this is Scott. Praise Satan.
Praise Satan. We are back.
We apologize. There's a little bit of a gap for those of you who have been waiting for the next episode. We're in the middle of the holiday season.
Fools.
And it's taking us a little bit longer to get these shows out.
All of your fools.
But amazingly, in that time, we had our 500th download.
Woohoo!
It happened Wednesday, which would have been December 8th. If you were the one and you downloaded the Frank Sinatra and the 12 Psychic Oboists, you were the lucky 500th listener. So be sure to tweet us and let us know, and we'll send you an autographed picture of Scott. 8x10, little paragraph on the back.
Real quick, to celebrate our 500th download, to celebrate the fact that we're back after a break, we also have a special little surprise for you. Look, we figured you might be getting a little tired of just hearing the three of us run our mouths nonstop and saying the same stuff over and over, so we thought it would be interesting to get another voice in the room. So we have a special guest with us. It is our good friend Mel. Mel, you want to say hello to everybody?
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
Hi,
Howdy.
Mel.
Thanks
Mel-
for having me. This
Mel,
is fun.
Mel, I'll start you out with the same questions Cory asked me the first time I did one of these. So, do you play music?
I do play music. In fact, I've played music with all of you fine people.
That is true.
That is true.
Do you enjoy music?
I enjoy music immensely. I've been playing music since I was 3.
Wow.
Not the bass, though. The bass been playing with you
What was
guys.
your first instrument?
Violin.
Ooh.
Cool. Well, congratulations. Those are the correct answers, which means you are now qualified to co-host the show. So
Oh,
welcome.
how nice. Thank you. Because, there are no more experts out there.
Expertise is relative.
Only experts and people that masturbate listening to Scott talk.
That's true.
There you go.
That's true.
There it is.
Most people listening to me often masturbate while I'm talking because it just seems like the most natural thing for them to do.
So that deep baritone. I'm a little engorged as we speak.
There, are you slightly tumescent, my friend? Oh, good. I've got a chubby. He's got a.
Is this how it's going to roll?
So we'd like to welcome Mel, who will never be coming back again.
Yes. All right. So tonight's rounds. In the first round, it will be Kiss Alive.
Yeah! Sorry.
Which Scott will be defending up against Ray Charles, The Birth of Soul.
black man.
That
Yeah.
Dave will be defending. And we didn't cover this, but Mel, you get the judge.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. That'll be easy.
Will it though? I don't know.
Will it
Will
though?
it?
I know.
You're going to
I know.
hear some compelling
It's going to be a tough one. I
arguments.
can't wait to hear the compelling arguments. Exactly.
Yes.
All right. We did our traditional rolling the 12-sided die backstage to determine who was going to go first, and I am going to go first, followed by Scott. So, Mel, are you ready? I'm ready whenever you are.
I'm ready.
right.
Do I have to do anything?
You just have to listen with
Hit
an
it,
open
Dave.
mind.
Hit
Do
it
it.
hard. Hit it like it should. Sorry.
I kind of wanted to see where that was going, actually.
He was
you did.
becoming turgid as we speak.
I was losing my focus.
All right, so look, if you've listened to the show for a while, you probably noticed that each of us has certain tendencies. One of the reasons it makes sense to get Mel in the room was so that we could get the different perspective in here. But we do have tendencies, right? Cory tends to do a lot of his opening statements in iambic pentameter. Scott likes to take you to the imaginary land inside his head where unicorns frolic among gumdrop trees and happy little elves engage in singing, dancing, and sadomasochistic ass play.
He knows me.
So my tendency is I like to tell stories. I like to find a little bit of background in the album, find little tidbits you didn't know, put you in the moment. What was the artist's inspiration, or what was the recording process like for this album? But for this album, I'm not going to do that. I'm not here to tell you a story. This is a 3 CD set that's made up entirely of songs recorded between 1952 and 1959. It's a compilation album, but it's not your greatest hits. In fact, I'm willing to bet you've probably even never heard of most of these tracks. Not only that, but for a lot of these songs, you might be wondering why they're even worth listening to at all. Especially early on, a lot of them just sound sort of like generic blues or bebop. Now, don't get me wrong, it's well done bebop and blues, but these songs don't sound particularly notable, or what you might even think of when you think of Ray Charles. There's no Georgia on my mind here. You can listen a dozen times and never hear I Can't Stop Loving You. But if you hang in there and you pay attention, you might notice that over the course of the album, something is evolving. By the time you get to the end of the first disc, there's been a shift in tone and emotion. The second disc opens with a song called I Got a Woman, and now it's not just 50s bebop anymore. The R&B feel is still there, but rather than a traditional 12-bar blues, the chord progressions start mirroring what you might have heard in a lot of black churches at the time. Eventually, the lyrics start to follow. Ray's still singing about romance, but he's doing so in the language of devotion and praise, most notably in a track that's blatantly titled Hallelujah, I Love Her So. His tone starts to change too. By the time you get to Drown in My Own Tears, he's moaning, he's wailing. He's no longer just hitting notes, he's pouring himself out. This isn't a man singing a song. This is the testimony of someone moved by the Holy Spirit, with his backup singers, the Raylettes, increasingly taking on the role of a church choir. Now, Ray insisted he didn't do this consciously, it just sort of crept in from his religious upbringing. But it's not just religious music, bits of jazz creep in too, like the saxophone on a bit of soul. The evolution is slow and steady, but by the time you get to It's All Right, all the elements are starting to come together into something very different than the tracks that started the album. Eventually, you get to What I Say. It's a rockin' little electric piano riff with a call and response between Ray and the Raylettes. The song started out entirely improvised at a dance gig in 1958. The music was supposed to run until around 1 in the morning, but Ray screwed up. By the time they finished their entire set list, he still had 12 minutes to fill. So he turned around and told the Raylettes, listen, I'm just gonna fool around and y'all just follow me. The audience reacted immediately. Ray could feel the room shaking as the crowd danced. It became the first record to draw attention from white audiences, but it was also banned from radio station because of lyrics that, as one critic put it, started in church but ended up in the bedroom. As I said earlier, I'm not here to tell you a story, because I don't have to. From start to finish, over 3 discs and 2.5 hours, this album tells its own story. The melding of R&B, gospel, and jazz, the call and return vocals, the wails, screams, and moans. This album is called The Birth of Soul. The title isn't an accident. This album is partly about the evolution of an artist, but you're also listening to the invention of an entire musical genre. Music historians will sometimes debate whether Ray Charles invented soul music or whether he just popularized it, but ultimately that's really a distinction without a difference, because without these songs, you probably wouldn't know about it either way. And I yield.
I love this album.
Ditto.
Yeah, and I mean,
Ray Charles, fucking man.
I these 2.5 hours was incredibly more enjoyable than the Clockwork Orange treatment of Enduring Donda.
Oh, you think?
Yeah,
dude.
Funny you should say that, because like I said, the biggest track off this album is What Did I Say, but probably the second most popular one is I Got a Woman, which, like I said, starts the second disc. And a lot of people today have only heard that song because it got sampled in Gold Digger by our friend Mr. Kanye West, or Ye West.
That's Ye West.
Yes.
Ye. That's Ye.
Well, and I guess technically it actually didn't get sampled in that song, because Ye did not use the Ray Charles recording. He had Jamie Foxx come in and record it.
I love this transitional period of the 50s where you have big band blending with blues, Dixieland jazz, bebop jazz, doo-wop, gospel, and the rest of the new quote-unquote rock and roll sounds that were driving the parents of those kids in the late 50s crazy.
Well, in a way, that was how rock and roll developed.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a blending of the blues and gospel, and there's all those other influences that hit and blended into what now is rock and roll.
That, What Did I Say? Like I said, that was probably the biggest track that's on this collection. And that song alone inspired a lot of rock and roll. So the Beatles, Paul McCartney said the first time he heard that song, that was when he knew he wanted to make music. George Harrison talked in a late interview about a party he went to in the 50s where they played that song over and over for 8 hours straight at the party.
that was also during his Hamburg period.
Yes, exactly. Guten Tag.
So he was probably wearing his codpiece slathered with pork fat.
It's funny though. They actually did play it in Hamburg. So when the Beatles were sort of formulating their sound when they were playing in underground clubs in Hamburg, they used to play What Did I Say on stage, and they actually had like this little thing where because it was all improvised originally, they liked to see how long they could make it go and just play once. They keep that one song going.
Well, okay. See,
Yeah.
So it really was. Back to the main point here about how this sort of like drove the evolution of rock and roll. Formationally, you could argue that you wouldn't have a Beatles had it not been for that track.
No, you wouldn't.
And honestly, the fact that this kind of goes without saying, but the fact that Ray Charles was able to do what he did and play with such precision and while being completely blind, because he had been blind since he was a kid. He actually went, after his mother passed away, he ended up moving in with one of his mother's friends in St. Augustine, Florida, where he went to a school of the deaf and blind, and he actually learned to play this Braille technique where the sheet music was in Braille, and you would read the Braille with one hand while learning with the right hand while learning the notes on the left hand. Go back and read the notes with the left hand while learning the notes for the right hand. And then you had to once you had it all memorized, then you had to put it all together.
To think about
that's insane.
How amazing his songwriting is to begin with, but to be visually impaired on top of that is just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, there's no comparison. I think that's why he's referred to as the genius, you know?
Absolutely.
Perhaps Beethoven.
Well, it's funny actually, because while he was at the School of Blind and Deaf in St. Augustine, he learned his chops. When that sight reading, he was actually learning Beethoven and Bach and Mozart.
There you go. Yeah.
And to be able to not just, I mean, I can't wrap my head around the whole Braille technique to begin with, but for something that evolved and complex to learn that way, just boggles my mind.
Right.
Oh, no shit, right?
Right, when you were born with sight and then you lose it. You know?
You're right. He wasn't blind from birth. He started losing his sight at I think age 7. I think it was glaucoma.
Blind at birth. That sounds like one of those death metal songs. This is their new song, Blind at Birth. Fuck. Sorry.
Anyway, this is it's a long, like I said, it's a 3 CD set. It's a long collection. It takes a while to get through, but it is. You think you guys said earlier, it's a fun listen.
Oh, it is.
You don't feel like you're sort of like lasting through a 3 CD set. It actually feels like it moves along very quickly.
Well, in its defense too, it's a collection of songs, so you're going to hear better tracks than you would just if you got the straight album.
Corey, you sent me a review the other day of a different review of this album. One of the things they talked about was, within the context of the Rolling Stone 500, there's a little bit of controversy over compilation albums. Like, is that really fair? Because it's not a single body of work where they were trying to... But the reality is, at this point in time in the music industry, there really was no album-driven music. Everything was about singles. It's a little unfair to expect Ray Charles to make a Dark Side of the Moon, right? Because the concept of album-driven music just hadn't really come around yet.
Well, I think even today it's gone back to that. It's more
absolutely. So absolutely. Now that everything is streaming services, it's almost like, I don't know why, to be honest, I don't know why any artist bothers to make a full album anymore.
Streaming killed the radio star, it was just, it's over.
All right. Anything else to say about Ray Charles before we move on?
He was blind.
Well, I think we covered that. Even though he was born in Georgia, actually, he did live, so 3 of us are in the Tampa area, and he did actually live in Tampa. Most music historians will tell you that he recorded his first ever tracks in Tampa, although there's a little bit of a distinction. There's a little bit of an argument over that. There's a few people that say, no, it was Miami, no, it was LA, but general consensus is his first ever recordings were done here in Tampa.
Cool. That would be cool. All right.
All
right, that ends that. Let's move on to Kiss. Alive.
No, Corey, it's alive!
That's true. There is an exclamation point on it.
It's alive! You got to have the exclamation. I'll get to that.
To Kiss. Alive!
Alive! I'm going to get to that.
Is that better?
That's much better. Okay, yeah. Alive! Yeah, anyway. Rock and roll all night and party every day. So, imagine the year. It's 1970, 1971. Stanley Eisen and Cheese Whiz, or Heimwitz. That was his real name, is Heimwitz. Were in a band, and they were called Wicked Lester in 1970 and 71. I know I'm not making that up. No, and do yourself a favor and just don't go listen to that one album. It's like a group of nerdy white pimps got together and, well, fuck, just don't bother. It's trash. And if you do go listening to it, just don't listen to the original versions of She and shout it out loud. Oh, fuck me. It's an affront to your fucking ears. I mean, it's more akin to pouring bubbling shit in your ears than listening to the real things. So anyway, Alive, which was an homage to Slade, Alive, was originally titled A Drowned Cow on the Side of the Road, but with iron pilings instead of eyes, and a strange smile worked into the flesh along one side of the skull. This was...
So go ahead and start the album title over again. Okay, take a deep breath.
Oh, okay.
It seems like it's got a Fiona feel to it.
It does.
Yeah.
All right. So, Alive! An homage to Slade. Alive! It was originally titled A Drowned Cow on the Side of the Road, but with iron pilings instead of eyes, and a strange smile worked into the side of the flesh along one side of the skull. But this was considered too over the top for Kiss at the time, and they went on with the simple Alive! The exclamation part was later passed on to Wham in the 80s. Thank you. Yeah. But really...
I didn't realize there was ownership.
Yeah, well, there is.
You can stop there. You're not getting a better joke than that one.
Thank you so much, See, but really, if you were a kid in the 70s or 80s, you heard Kiss. You knew who the fuck Kiss was. You probably loved their music and their stage antics, even if you didn't get to see them live, which most of you didn't. I did manage to catch a show on the Animalized tour without the makeup. Ugh. Anyway... Kiss. What a slag little glam band. Gene Simmons, formerly Cheese Whiz, and Paul Stanley Ison, along with Ace Frehley, a.k.a. Paul Frehley, and Peter George, John Crisacula. What a fucking... He's gonna die of nomenclature. Anyway, real names aside, Kiss was the band from 1973 that somehow gained a worldwide cult-type following. Listening to this made me feel like I was hanging out with Frank Sinatra at Studio 56, snorting blow-off of David Bowie's Knife collection, and chomping on Quaaludes and Mandrax with Keith Richards while shooting heroin with Steven Tyler. It's head-banging in the old school way. It's cock rock that's right out of a Perk commercial. It's, gee, your ass smells terrific. And it's all that and a bag of chips. But do we really know what flavor there were? And can we please keep Gene's tongue out of there? Because for fuck's sake, that guy's nasty. For all its foibles, it wasn't a bad album, but it was hardly live either. The live version of Rock and Roll All Night is now the standard from that album, even though it's about as live as David Bowie and Michael Jackson are today. Oh, yeah, I said that. Sorry. Anyway, despite the album being a product of the studio as much as it was a product of the live performances it was taken from, it's not a bad album, but it's not a great album either. But the story behind the recording was different. It was produced by Eddie Kramer, bringing the recordings of the band live, and they kind of sucked because they were all over the fucking place. Gene and Paul were hardly ever in front of their mics. The crowd kind of sucked except for a few places, so they boosted the crowd noise. They took all the best hurrahs and they mixed them into the new album, fixed all the shit that was off in the studio, and boom, Kiss Alive was born. Kramer was used the best crowd cheers. The band re-recorded all their parts on the album. The only truly live performance on here was Peter Criss's drums. So leave it to the drummer of all things. Anyway, Kiss are masters of marketing, of hype, from which Ye, Taylor Swift, and all those other bards and morons could learn a thing or three. These guys almost wrote the book on selling out for your mediocre pop rock pseudo-metal bands. Their playing is generic, their singing is generic, their lyrics are sexist and dated and hopelessly out of touch with reality. For instance, bad riffs by mediocre musicians and lame lyrics, all about girls and partying and dumb shit. I mean, you'd have to be brain dead to get into these lyrics. Even the 12 psychic oboists have more lyrical potency than Kiss ever would. But Cheese Whiz and his constant references to analingus and wanting to fuck something dead are just so over the top that it's hard to listen to some points. Imagine the sleazecraft of Aerosmith without the cleverness, the loudness of The Who without the songcraft, the bombast of Led Zeppelin without the vision, the pomposity of Emerson, Lake and Palmer without the musical chops to back it up. That's pretty much what you get with Kiss. Pale shadows of the best rock band ever had to offer, or the best that rock ever had to offer. Dumbed down, mediocre rock pitched at the lowest possible common denominator. Gene Simmons and the boys are just blood-gulping idiots who made a shitboat full of money off of the gullibility of teens in the American record market at the time. If this album was released today, Kiss would have failed immediately, and they would have been called out as the complete shitbirds that they actually are. I rest.
You really feel,
for the benefit of the audience at home, just a reminder, that was an argument in favor of the album.
Yes.
Well, yes, it was. Yeah, of course.
You know what, Scott? That was very good.
That was like your most seriously. That was credit where due. That was like your most on point argument that I've ever heard you make.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few tangents.
Thought I was.
Well, you only wandered off to fantasy land a couple of times. It was.
You thought I was going to talk about something else.
Not only that, now I feel like a real jackass because my opening statement.
See, yeah, you thought I was going to be mentioning Frank Sinatra again, probably.
You did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
God damn it.
You did bring up the 12 oboists. So, excuse me.
And these snorting
Psychic.
coke off of Bowie's knives at Studio 56. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everything you said is true. I mean, I actually had in my notes, Mel and I were joking before we started recording. I actually had in my notes the phrase, a subpar album by a subpar band.
It really is.
You almost listen to this now and you're like, how the F was this band so big in the 70s? And the answer is the stage shows. It was the explosions and the blood and the costumes and the makeup.
It's pomp and circumstance.
It's the theatrics.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why making a live album made so much sense, because that was 90% of what they were.
Well, that's an interesting story behind the album, too, was that Casablanca, their record label, was so in debt that they were getting ready to drop Kiss, and they were getting ready to close. And then when Kiss made Alive, they immediately wrote them a check for $2 million to keep Kiss on the payroll.
Yeah.
And it pretty much saved Casablanca Records for a few years at least.
I also think not only was Kiss primarily about the live experience, which is why it made sense. The other thing I think that probably doesn't register with audiences quite as much today is why live albums were important at the time.
Right.
There's no YouTube. People didn't go to concerts and like sit in the 30th row and take shitty, grainy video and then throw it up on YouTube. What happened back then was an artist you liked or heard really good things about came to your town. If you were lucky, you got tickets. Sometimes that involves sitting up out in a sleeping bag for 3 days on end. Yep. But if you were lucky, you got tickets. And if you got tickets, you got to go and you got to experience it. And it wasn't just the show. It was the crowd. It was the noise. It was the screaming. It was the whole experience. And if you weren't one of the lucky ones who made it into that show, you just had to rely on somebody else telling you about it. At the time, in the 70s and even into the 80s and 90s, a live album was as close as you were going to get if you weren't one of the lucky ones that actually managed to score tickets to that show. The significance of a live album in the mid-70s is much different than the significance today.
But anyways, live albums were the shit. People ate those up, and a lot of the live albums, think about it, some of the versions of the songs were better live than the original recording.
That's true.
When Scott said rock and roll all night, I mean, I would be willing to bet most people have never actually heard the studio version of that song.
I don't think I've ever heard it. Yeah.
Because when it gets played on the radio, it's always the live version. It's a Paul McCartney, Maybe I'm Amazed. There's a studio version of that song, too. You never hear it on the radio. You always hear the live version.
I Want You, Don't Want Me. You never hear this.
Right, live, anything off Live at Budokan.
Rarely do you hear Hammer Smash Face on the studio version. You always hear the live version of that, too.
So true.
Yeah, from Cannibal Corpse. I mean, just saying.
Yeah. It's kind of a shame. I sometimes think that the studio version has a lot more subtle nuances that you don't really capture on the radio.
Yeah, I mean,
but should be played. One cool thing that they did mention is that they raised Peter Criss's drum riser in the show.
Oh, right. That was another big moment.
So this was like before Tommy Lee was doing it.
No.
I mean, I'm not going to diss Tommy Lee.
All those guys took their cues from Kiss.
Oh yeah, no. Kiss set the stage literally for all of the theatrical antics that every other band did on stage after that.
I mean, even up to that point, you could argue that Alice Cooper was like progenitor of this with the stage psychodrama, as they called it, and he was to a degree, but he was not as wild as Kiss was.
Right. We wouldn't have the pyrotechnics if it wasn't for Kiss.
Right.
Setting off bombs basically inside arenas.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Y'all got anything else on this? I mean, really, it's Kiss. I don't feel like giving them too much time.
What do you think, Mel?
I don't.
Well,
like
Mel has to render her decision. We don't.
Oh, that's right.
Mel's more than welcome to jump. Don't get me wrong. Jump in if you have something to say. But I'm like, I don't want you to tip. I don't want you to tip your hand in your official.
I'm just curious.
I don't like Kiss at all. I tried to listen to this album and I got like maybe a track and a half through it, and I'm like, I can't do it.
Thank you.
It's just they're boring. They're boring. I've always thought they were boring. I know they're, some people a lot of people really love them. I can't do it. I just don't like Dave said, subpar album by a subpar band.
Yeah, no, if all you know is the music, I would say, I can't imagine anybody sitting down and just listening to Kiss's music and saying, boy, I'm really into this band. I think the people that are still into them, it's because they're conjuring up in the head all of this stuff about the stage shows.
Yeah.
In the same breath, if they came in concert, all decked out with all the,
and did the full theatrical
stuff, and did the whole thing, I would be there in a heartbeat, and I would love it. To Dave's point, like it's a live show experience, and I think that is what clinched their audience and their followers.
By the way, you want the best evidence of why it's a live show experience? Corey, you actually, Scott, I think it was you who said it, that you went and saw them, and it was one of the tours where they didn't do the makeup.
And you grimaced.
I did.
That immediately takes away half the experience.
Like you, Mel, I got 2 songs into their set and left. It was that bad. It was just like, oh, look, it's a bunch of...
I wasn't getting anything out of it.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I mainly went for the opener, which was Wasp, and those guys fucking ruled, so...
Oh, you mean when you say you left in 2 songs?
You actually
walked out of the
gig.
concert, you mean?
I left the concert after 2 songs, yeah.
Oh, no, Mel was saying she bailed on the album after 2 songs. I thought you were saying the same
No, I
thing.
left the concert after 2 songs. No.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's even a bigger deal.
That's
I mean,
big...
I just queued it up on,
because it was alive, but it wasn't very alive. So,
free plug for Amazon.
Yeah, hey, Amazon.
That's
rocks.
what I use. There we go.
There we go.
Ditto.
All right, so but before Mel renders her verdict, I got a little quiz for you. Yes, because these guys have different stage names, somewhat different from theirs, there are other musicians out there with different names. I'm going to give you their real name. You tell me who it is.
His real name is Satan.
Robert Zimmerman.
Oh, Bob Dylan.
All right.
It's Bob.
Gordon Sumner.
Sting.
Yep. Paul Hewson.
Hewson.
Marilyn Manson.
Fuck. Did you say fuck?
No, that's Brian. No, that's Brian.
Brian Warner. Brian Warner is Marilyn
That's
Manson.
it, yeah.
Bono.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Bono is Paul.
I can tell you where he got the name Bono, where they took the name Bono from.
Sonny Bono?
No. It was they saw a billboard. It was a billboard for a company called Bonovox, which was an advertisement for a company that made hearing aids.
Okay.
Did you say urine aids?
Yes.
Yes,
he
urine
did.
aids.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Right.
I didn't at all say hearing aids, which is something you desperately need. I said urine aids.
I got you. Okay.
The drink that's fun for the whole family. Urine aid.
And then here's an easy one. Declan Patrick McManus.
Oh, that's the Edge, right?
No.
Declan Patrick McManus.
Henry Rollins.
Elvis Costello.
Henry Rollins.
Sorry.
All right. Couple of lyrics around the name Kiss. No, I don't even know your name. It doesn't matter. You're my experimental game. Just human nature.
That's Katy Perry, bitch.
That's it. Scott gets it. Yep. Okay. I know how to undress me. I want to be your fantasy. Maybe you could be mine.
That's Prince from Kiss.
There you go.
The song Kiss by...
Right.
Yes. And finally, don't try to describe a Kiss concert if you've never seen it. Don't ever forget that you just may
Jimmy
wind up
Buffett
being gonged. Yes. From Mañana. Very good. Okay.
Please don't say mañana if you don't mean it.
Don't mean it. Okay.
Anyway.
We'll take a little break, and Mel will come back and tell us.
And she will be praising Satan.
Oh, I love cream-filled beavers. I love cream-filled beavers. I love cream-filled beavers. Yeah, I love them cream-filled beavers, damn it.
Next Halloween, folks, you want to be the most popular house in your neighborhood?
Yeah.
Give every kid that comes to the door a nice cream-filled beaver.
Yeah.
That's right. Here you go. And tell them, please take this home and show it to your mom and dad. You will be the most popular person on the block.
And by the way, you don't just buy one at a time. They come in a box.
That's right.
Oh, I love cream-filled beavers. I love cream-filled beavers. I love cream-filled beavers. Yeah, I love them cream-filled beavers, damn it.
Go to www.liqurwhaat.com. Tell them we sent you, even if they don't know who the hell we are.
Cream-filled beavers!
All right, we are back, and Mel, the suspense is killing me.
Okay.
What is your official, on the Kiss versus Ray Charles battle, what is your official ruling?
So it should be no surprise to you all, since I pretty much just articulated it moments ago. But yeah, Ray Charles wins. Kiss sucks.
Okay. I you know what? I like that.
Fair enough.
I don't think you're going to get any argument around here.
I was holding my bladder for that.
Yes. Kind of hard to build a court case when one of the lawyers goes, "Ooh, that guy's right."
I wasn't expecting that Perry Mason moment. Wait a minute. Why have a star witness?
I think there's an old episode of The Simpsons where like Lionel Hutz is representing them in something, and the late Phil Hartman, and the other lawyer makes some argument, and Lionel Hutz goes, "Ooh, he's gonna win."
All right, that ends round one. I think we could stop it here, and we'll stop here.
We will stop here.
No, we're stopping here.
Buck stops there. No,
here.
there.
No, here.
Wherever you... Dude, what?
Fine, it can be there. It can be there.
Fucking stop it. I don't care.
Okay, we'll stop.
You act like it matters.
It might.
All right, so moving on to round two, which I will be judging. As we said earlier, this will be Coat of Many Colors by Dolly Parton up against One Nation Under a Groove by Funkadelic.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, once again, we've rolled the 12-sided die, and Mel, I believe you were going to go first and tell us about Dolly Parton's album. So anytime you are ready, please proceed.
Sing it, sister!
Sing it, just like Dolly. Okay, so I had the daunting honor of researching everyone's favorite fairy godmother, Dolly Parton, and her album, Coat of Many Colors. As most everyone knows, Dolly grew up in the mountains of Tennessee, and she was born in 1946, one of 12 children. And on your left, we have the African gazelle. When she was young, you could cut that part out, Cory.
No, I'm keeping that. That's awesome.
When she was young, her uncle encouraged her to play the guitar and write songs, which she performed for her family. As soon as she could, she went to Nashville to become a songwriter, and soon she became a singer-songwriter on the Porter Wagoner Show. All right, so I want to talk about the overall feel of the album as I was listening to this repeatedly. I love it. I hear something new every time I listen to it. She's the queen of storytelling. I feel like the sound is iconically late 60s, early 70s with those groovy bass lines that are comforting. The delivery of some heavy topics with those sweet, sweet melodies of a 60s folk song. Dolly wrote most of the 10 tracks on the album, with 3 written by Porter Wagoner. One of the songs that he wrote called If I Lose My Mind, which is just a little out there. Even she said, she's like, now anything goes now, but back then it was a little racy. It's essentially about an orgy or like a threesome that she's telling her mother this story. It's just it's a little disturbing, and not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that's how it is conveyed.
You heard it here first, folks. Mel endorses orgies.
I didn't say that.
Maybe threesomes, not orgies. There's a slight difference.
Okay, all right, moving on. So the album, of course, opens with the title track, Coat of Many Colors, which, if you have any feelings whatsoever, you will feel a pit in your stomach for this poor little girl who's bullied because she's poor. And of course, she was laughed and bullied for being poor. She ran home in tears to tell her mother what happened. And she looked at her and she said, "We're not poor." She's like, "We may not have money, but we are rich in kindness and love." And I feel like that lesson shapes Dolly personally how she is today with her philanthropic dedication and her humanitarian gestures. I think that this is a story that many people know, but I like to listen to it just from her words and from her, writings, just because it just meant so much to her. In fact, it was a little difficult for her to play that song even after her mother passed away. And another just little fun side note, Dolly wrote that song on the back of a dry cleaning receipt after Porter Wagoner picked up his dry cleaning. So she sees the spikely rhinestone suit come out of the dry cleaner. It popped into her head. She grabbed that receipt and jotted down the song just immediately. My Blue Tears is one of my favorite tracks in that it has that sound, the Appalachian movement sound of it iconically where she comes from. it instantly when you hear it. But for this, the harmonies are so captivating because it's one voice through the entire song. So God love you, Dolly. That's a good song. And actually, a year after that, I think Goldie Hawn recorded that song, and then later on,
I never heard them.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Now let's talk about, and this is sort of my final point. Many say that the track "She's Never Met a Man She Didn't Like" is a precursor to Jolene. Record, of course, was released in 1971, and Jolene was released in 1974.
But I have to agree with you. The Porter Wagoner songs are the weakest. they stand out because they seem completely out of context. And when Dolly sings them, she's not giving it the 150% she gives everything else. And it's clear. She's the storyteller, and he's got like, it's almost like a vignette inside of like a larger story. And the other word I wrote down was mansplaining.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to say Porter was like the serious white bread of that generation. He was so white bread. He was so staid. He was so conservative. And Dolly was not playing within. She didn't color within those lines. So.
And this really is like one of the big albums where she's really sort of trying to sort of move out from under his shadow, so to speak, and kind of find her own voice,
which she clearly needed to do. And I'm glad she did.
Oh, yeah.
I think they maintained a very good working relationship. I think everybody, you think of Dolly Parton, one of the first things everybody thinks of is, I Will Always Love You, which, Whitney then turned around and redid for The Bodyguard.
Right.
Everybody thinks that was written as this big romantic gesture. That song was actually written for Porter Wagoner.
That's right.
That was her way of saying goodbye to him. Like, I got to move on. I got to go my own way here, but I'm always going to love you and what we did together. And
what's also noticeable is this is the sound of that 70s era music and that country sound.
Yeah.
I was looking up the musicians. The drummer played with Elvis and Willie Nelson and Kenny Rogers. Yeah. Piano and the fiddle players played with all sorts of other national people, same people I mentioned. And of course, Pete Drake, the steel guitar player, has played with everybody. I guess when there's a really good steel guitar player out there, he is in high, or she is in high demand.
There's only like 4 of them.
Yeah, the musicians are exceptional.
They are.
Yeah, the musicianship was great. Mel, you said this. The harmonies were great. I'm not a huge country western person, but I can definitely appreciate this album for what it is. Dolly is always very earnest in her songwriting and in her singing. And when she's doing something a little bit on the dark side, like My Blue Tears, or later with Jolene, that earnestness really, really works to her advantage. When she gets into some of the more traditional songs about mama or we were poor but we were happy, it gets a little kitschy, is a little bit of a Hallmark movie moment in there. In fact, Coat of Many Colors was actually made into a TV movie. So it gets a little bit cheesy, but that earnestness, whether it's on a recording, whether it's in an interview, whether it's whatever, she doesn't hold anything back. You're getting her real person. So there's no sort of celebrity persona there. You're getting the real person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's no bullshit there. I mean, like I said, she's a storyteller. What I like to is, like, even from the first 2 songs, the huge dichotomy. And like, the first is the doting, loving mother, and the second one is the hoochie mother.
It's almost like she needs to like put some humor in there and be like, all right, guys, let's knock it off. Let's laugh a little bit. Like,
she's not serious all the time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I like that. It's like, you got that second mom that you picture as like, the woman in like the leather, or not the leather, the leopard print.
The leather. That's the 4th verse of If I Lose My Mind, the one that got cut on the...
That's an homage to Frank right there.
It's the one she cut with Frank while they were in Hamburg.
Yes. But like the leopard print, the high heels, the lipstick, the beehive hair. Wait, hold on. Stop. I think I've just described Peg Bundy.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Peg Bundy was just emulating Dolly at her finest.
But yeah, just fantastic all around. Absolutely.
Yes, it really is.
It is. You did mention the one song, the If I Lose My Mind, and these swingers, orgy, whatever it is. It is a little bit hard to reconcile, especially today, because people look at Dolly, and I think you sort of see everybody's favorite grandma, basically. To recognize that this woman did once, in fact, she didn't write it. I understand she didn't write it. But this woman did go in the studio and cut a song about swingers. It's a little hard to reconcile.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit.
It doesn't.
For a long time, she did Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Well, that's true. So. That's true. And you know what? And you know what? Maybe that comes back to what I said earlier about you're always getting the real person. I don't think she's ever been afraid to talk about sex or...
No.
No,
but
she was never a prude.
But it's not her song, though.
But nobody forced her to go in the studio and cut it either.
Oh, I'm not saying.
You know what I mean?
But I would like to hear it from her voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, there are plenty of songs out there. Probably
especially country music, which in this country we're very puritanical about sex to begin with, and country and western you particularly tend to get this sort of religious audience that I would think that like this is kind of a bold move to put that on a country record, especially then.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree, Mel. We should have Dolly Parton on the show.
Yeah.
All right, Dolly, there you go.
I'll call her agents this week.
We're calling you out, Dolly. Come talk to us. Tell us the real story.
All right, so thank you, Mel, for that. We are now going to turn to Cory, who is going to tell us about One Nation Under a Groove by Funkadelic.
Let's talk about funk, developed in the mid-60s, consisting of a mix of soul, jazz, and rhythm and blues. Funk steps away from being driven by melodies or basic chord progressions and has more laser focus on the groove, composed of a badass bass, electronic, or derived from keyboards. And percussionists, cowbells, tambourines, maracas, wood blocks, empty trash can lids, bottles, whatever. I mean, imagine you just let loose a lot of drummers inside like a hardware store, and that's pretty much what you get. Yes, maybe one of those. But what I'm saying is you've let loose a lot of like percussively adept people, and it's not like some big white drum circle. These multi-percussive instruments weave a complex tapestry of interlocking grooves that get people up off their ass and dancing. And when I hear this funk, I want to get my suspenders and roller skates and get my honky jive ass out on the rink. At the top of the influences pyramid of funk is James Brown. With 3 albums in the top 500, I hope we get a chance to come around to him. Moving down the pyramid, we find Sly Stone, Jimi Hendrix, and George Clinton. And all of them are considered innovators of funk music. Clinton took funk to the next level, drawing on psychedelia, science fiction, prog rock, yeah, that's right, you heard me, and an outrageous fashion sense. Funkadelic was essentially the band supporting Clinton's doo-wop group, the Parliaments, in the 60s. Over time, and with a dispute with the record company that owned the Parliaments' name, they changed their name to Funkadelic. Fast forward to 1974, George Clinton revamps and creates Parliament, a band comprised of most of Funkadelic. But both are operating separately but concurrently. Parliament was the more mainstream funk, with soulful vocals and horns. Funkadelic was the experimental and freeform. Where this is going is that both bands toured as Parliament Funkadelic, better known as P-Funk, which became the name all the players in Clinton's troupe of musicians, that was the name they took on, and what the kiddies in that time called funk was P-Funk, and yet it was the name of both of these bands. We finally arrive in 1978, and One Nation Under a Groove, the most commercially successful album, and listed as one of the best funk albums of all time, featuring members of James Brown's backing band, bassist Bootsy Collins, as well as a couple of the drummers coming in and out. As we roll into the 80s, the sounds of George Clinton cascade into Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Kool and the Gang, the SOS Band, the Gap Band, and a little band that George Clinton produced on their second album, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. In conclusion, the funk that the Godfather dropped has been dutifully picked up and passed down through the decades, making little twists and turns. But even if the funk has James Brown's name on it, George Clinton and Funkadelic have their fingerprints all over it. I yield.
You could say they got fingered for
those
it.
Those are words one could say.
I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying it happened, but it could happen.
So interesting to me that we're talking, although not going head to head, that we were talking about Kiss and Funkadelic on one show for 2 reasons. Number one, earlier on we were talking about Kiss. We talked about the fact that this live album was meant to bail out Casablanca Records because they were basically on the verge of bankruptcy. Funkadelic's label, Casablanca Records. Mm-hmm. Additionally, the other sort of correlation here is those wild big stage shows that Kiss was known for. That was a big part of what Funkadelic was doing too. Like UFOs on stage, crazy costumes. It was a different kind of vibe. One of the guitar players said their costume vibe, George basically said, dress up in whatever you want and just show up.
Yeah.
George would take a towel from his hotel room and turn it into a diaper and go out on stage and play and wearing nothing but a towel from the hotel room. There was another guy who wore a monk's outfit with a cape. It was a different kind of spectacle, but it was similar to Kiss in that the spectacle of the show was half of the draw.
You didn't know what you were going to get.
Yeah.
Which was the beauty of that, too.
I remember I watched some documentary on George Clinton, and one of the backup singers was, described the alien spaceship coming down. She's like, the crowd just went wild. She's like, I think half of them thought it was a real spaceship.
Well, yeah,
she's like, it was great. And then it, pumped up the band and got them going. So.
It was actually one of those shows afterwards where the spaceship came down. They were playing in D.C., and after the show, these 2 girls, LaTanya and Darlene, they would ultimately introduce themselves as, ran up, telling them how much they loved the show, what a great show it was. And one of them said it was like one nation under a groove in there. And that was the point where George was like, that's a great phrase. I got to use that. And that's where the album title came from. And actually, if you look at the credits on the album, Darlene and LaTanya are actually credited on the album as come up with the title.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant album. I mean, and what Cory was saying, what you were saying about, it being, the progenitors, so many other funk albums and funk acts. Everybody who knows about P-Funk was kind of influenced to some degree or another by that sound.
Yeah, and they were influenced by everything.
I
mean,
yeah.
They weren't just playing, they weren't just limiting themselves to funk. Cory, you kind of alluded to this. They were pulling in everything. In fact, one of the tracks on this album, Who Says a Funk Band Can't Play Rock? The whole point is they're bringing in like fuzz guitars, and there's part of the vocal that sounds like Hendrix. They're really directly responding to this whole concept of, well, you just ought to stay in your lane and play one genre. They're like, fuck that. We're going to do everything.
One of the quotes in that documentary was that, they were this doo-wop band, and one of the questions I think they asked themselves is why are you trying to fit into this? And then they kind of spun in a completely different direction, which obviously was needed and thankfully to influence bands to come.
Yeah.
I would compare this to Bitches Brew.
Yeah. I was going to say it's got a lot of jazz vibes.
But as far as that whole experimental, we're gonna take a lot of different sounds, we're gonna throw them together, and we're just gonna make this work. But it was more percussive based, which I really like. I mean, you listen to it closely, you hear like all sorts of different instruments in the background.
That's where the prog comes in.
Yeah, they were pulling together genres, they were pulling together instrumentation, and you never know how much people really mean some of the shit they say, but George Clinton was on record. He was not just trying to bring genres together, he was trying to bring people together. He was trying to bring black audiences and white audiences and all these different groups, whereas funk had traditionally been a largely black audience, he was trying to bring in more people and bring them all together. In one interview, he said, we have to all come together because, quote, the real problems are going to come when we're dealing with other planets and have to worry about aliens coming to eat us or fuck us with 5 dicks.
There you go. See?
Direct quote from Mr. Clinton. Not the one who was president, the other Mr. Clinton.
But why 5?
Because they're aliens.
All right. Y'all got anything else?
I don't think we have anything else. This was...
It's an ass-smacking album, man. It really is. Makes you want to just smack some ass.
There was one review I read that I think summarized it really well that says, if you didn't like this album, then you weren't dancing when you heard it.
No shit, right? I mean, you want to get Dolly on her knees and smack her ass for listening to that album.
Sure. Okay, I think now we will take our short break, and then I will be right back to render my verdict.
Hi there. This is post-production Cory. Once again, I'd like to welcome you back to Musical Shenanigans, and thank you for listening to our little show. Please hit that subscribe button. More subscribers means more subscribers. Check out our website, musicalshenanigans.coretwist.com. CORTWIST, and you can find us on the Instagram. Finally, if you're feeling magnanimous, because 2024 is the year of magnanimity, that's an absolute fact, I just made that up, please go to buymeacoffee.com/shenanigans. Throw us a couple bucks. If you're enjoying the show, just get us a coffee. Keep us caffeinated. Keep us happy. Happy podcasters makes for a happy podcast. That, too, is an absolute fact. And now, back to the show from long ago.
All right. These are really good albums. They're both really good albums. This is a little bit of a tricky one because even though I'm not a huge country and western fan, like I said earlier, I really can appreciate the Dolly Parton album. There's a lot of it. There's a lot there to like. The Funkadelic album is also great. I think at the end of the day, though, for me on this one, it comes down to innovation. I said earlier, the Dolly album was it was great, but it was largely standard 70s country fare. Like, there wasn't really a lot of envelope pushing there in a lot of ways. Whereas, as we just talked about with Funkadelic, they were trying to bring all these different genres together, all the different instrumentation together. They really were doing something new, and I think it had, farther down the road, it had broader impacts that Cory talked about, all these other artists that it would ultimately end up influencing. So at the end of the day, I gotta go with Funkadelic.
Praise Satan!
All right, so quick review. Kiss Alive was number 305. And Ray Charles was number 210.
Nice.
We align there.
Nice.
Funkadelic, One Nation Under Groove, was number 360. And Dolly Parton, Coat of Many Colors, was number 257.
Oh, we have an upset.
Nice.
All right,
awesome.
So we are calling this the last show of season 1. I mean, really, why not?
Yeah, sure.
It's a podcast nobody really knows, but we can just change the season. So this ends season 1. We've hit 25% of the albums.
An admirable goal, sir.
75% to go. The next time when we start season 2, here will be the albums.
Oh.
In round 1, it will be Outcast with Aqua Mini.
Oh, Jesus.
And I could be pronouncing that wrong. Aquemini from 1998. Going up against The Piper at the Gates of Dawn by Pink Floyd.
Wow. Okay. At least it wasn't Ummagumma. Okay.
No one needs to,
But
no
we
one gets over
did
Ummagumma.
get a Sid Barrett in there though. So okay. Yeah.
In round 2, it's the self-titled Rage Against the Machine from 1992.
Everybody, hey there, hey!
Yeah. Sorry.
Killing in the name of.
Sorry.
Against Jimi Hendrix, Axis, Bold as Love.
I can feed my old family with a box of craft shells.
The Pink Floyd and
Anyway.
Jimi Hendrix albums are both from 1967.
Are they?
Yes. So we've got Outcast from 98 and Rage from 92. So it's the 90s against the 60s.
Ooh. Yeah. Axis Bold as Love. What a great album.
That's going to be
Who's judging
that's going to be an
Well, we'll
interesting
figure that
matchup.
out.
Oh, okay.
Because Piper is one of those Floyd albums that still has a lot of that psychedelic weirdness.
See, I could tell you a weird story about Piper, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that is what happened."
Yeah, save
You
it
know
for the
what?
show.
Then you can defend
Yeah.
it.
No, fuck no. I don't want
Oh,
that.
you
shit.
get Outcast. Perfect. Okay, so
There's a couple of good tracks on there, but there's a lot of that's the period of time where Floyd was primarily making music for people that are high, and if you're not high, it's kind of hard to get into a lot of it.
all right. Well, Mel, thank you so very much.
Yes, thank
Thanks
you,
for
Mel.
having
This
me,
was
guys.
lovely.
This was fun.
Thank you
This
for
has
enduring.
been great. Yes.
You've been a very good sport. Thank you.
And we'll see you all next year.
Adios.
Happy New Year.
Praise Satan.
Praise Satan, everyone! It's Tiny Baphomet!
I know you can't fucking see it. I don't care. God, shut up. Leave my sight gags alone.